Good afternoon, everyone. We will be getting started shortly, and we encourage you to use the chat to introduce yourselves, your name and your organization, and also to ask questions throughout the presentation, which we'll have time at the end to answer. If you need technical support, please message Sasha Perotti directly here in the chat. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give it just one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining today. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Catherine Antos, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Planning and Sustainability here at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Thank you for joining this briefing and for the release of our new research report from App to Table, Rapid Food Deliveries in Massachusetts. This is an important piece of work focusing on a sector experiencing explosive growth, exploring the transportation, land use, and economic impacts, and also identifying policies and actions for sustainable management of this evolving sector. Before we get started, actually, if we can move forward. Before we get started, I just want to note a few items. First, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording and chat are considered public record. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your camera or exit the meeting. Second, we will take questions after our presentation. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature, which our staff are monitoring. You will not be able to unmute yourself. In order to access the chat, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little chat bubble. Click on that and a chat box will appear on your right or as a separate pop-up screen where you can enter your question. Please also use the chat to identify yourself and your organization. Travis, if we can move ahead. I'm joined today by the authors of this report, Alison Felix, who's a principal planner here at MAPC, and Travis Pollack, a senior transportation planner at MAPC. I want to thank them for their research, and I know you're going to learn a lot hearing from them today. Also with us today are Eric Barasa, the director of our transportation department at MAPC, and he's going to facilitate the question and answer session. And then also Lizzie Wyant, Deputy Executive Director of Public Affairs and Advocacy, who will close out our briefing today. Next slide. So this report from App to Table, Rapid Food Deliveries in Massachusetts, concentrates on the transportation, land use, and economic effects of rapid food deliveries from third-party mobile apps, such as DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats, as well as fast delivery of convenience store items from mobile apps, including GoPuff and Getir, that are typically delivered within 15 to 45 minutes. This sector has seen tremendous growth in recent years, and it's critical that we understand the impacts. The report puts forward potential policies that could help the Commonwealth, municipalities, and the mobile delivery platforms more sustainably manage the growth and impacts of these rapid food deliveries. This report is a follow-up to MAPC's 2021 report, Hidden and in Plain Sight, Impacts of E-Commerce in Massachusetts, which investigated the effects of online commerce on municipalities in the Commonwealth. It also followed on MAPC's Fair Choices research on the impacts of app-based ride-hailing in Massachusetts. Finally, this report is aligned with the recommendations adopted in the regional plan Metro Common 2050, including improving access and regional mobility, reducing vehicle miles traveled, enabling wealth creation and intergenerational wealth transfer, and expanding and promoting the resilience of small businesses, particularly those owned by people of color. Next slide. So on the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to talk more about what are rapid food deliveries, share key findings from this research, provide recommendations, have time for questions and answers with you, and then talk about next steps. And after this webinar, you will receive a link to the full report. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Travis, one of the authors of this research. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. So again, I'm Travis Pollack. I'm a senior transportation planner at MAPC. And the first thing I want to do is we'll define a couple of the terms that we use in our report. So we define e-commerce as the buying and selling of goods and services via the internet and the transfer of money and data to complete the sale. And this graphic here shows how e-commerce is upending the way that we receive and deliver goods. So in the traditional delivery model, items were made, sent to a distribution center or warehouse, and then to a retail store or restaurant where then you as the consumer would go and purchase the goods. Now with online ordering, the delivery model is emerging into multiple ways for products to be ordered, distributed, and delivered, with distribution centers and retail centers and restaurants blending the when, where, and how goods are distributed. And for today, we'll be concentrating on online food ordering from both restaurants and micro-fulfillment centers, or dark stores as they're sometimes called, and the methods and impacts of these rapid deliveries. For the purposes of this research, we defined rapid food deliveries as deliveries of restaurants and convenience store items that are typically delivered within 15 to 45 minutes. We are concentrating on what are sometimes called third-party platforms, where the order and delivery are usually carried out by a platform or business that does not own the restaurant or store that is preparing the order. The largest businesses in this space are Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub, usually providing restaurant orders, and Getir and GoPuff, which typically provide quick convenience store items. Getir and GoPuff operate their own fulfillment centers, and GoPuff operates its own stores and also delivers items from brick and mortar convenience stores. And for this report, we did not include larger grocery orders that can be same day, but are often delivered like in a 2 to 4 hour window. And as we note in the report, this marketplace is evolving with companies like Uber Eats delivering grocery items and Grubhub partnering with GoPuff on deliveries. So as was mentioned, this research on rapid food deliveries is the result of previous e-commerce and ride-hailing research at MAPC. And the data here from Uber caught our attention. This is how our research started. So this chart shows data from Uber's Security and Exchange Commission filings from 2019 to 2022. And the darker blue that you see on the bars is earnings from mobility, which is ride-hailing, and the lighter blue is deliveries, such as Uber Eats. And the black line you see at the top on these bars is freight. And during the pandemic, Uber's business model flipped from mostly ride-hailing to Uber Eats deliveries. Whereas in 2019, 3/4 of Uber's business was ride-hailing. By 2021, Uber Eats deliveries was over 60% of the earnings. And in 2022, it's now about equally split between ride-hailing and food services, with Uber's freight business growing. So we began to ask, what else is happening in this rapid food delivery marketplace, given what we're seeing here? And our research into this area of e-commerce attempted to answer three main questions. First, what is the scale of these rapid food deliveries, not just in the US, but in Massachusetts? What are the impacts of these rapid deliveries, both on our local streets and economy? And what action should the Commonwealth and others undertake to sustainably manage the impact of these deliveries? So first, we'll look at the scale and growth of these deliveries. So prior to the pandemic, most online deliveries orders were done via what is called, under Statista, a marketing firm, restaurant to consumer, via proprietary restaurant platforms such as Domino's or a restaurant's website. And then during the pandemic, the demand for online food orders grew, with more consumers turning to third-party apps for those orders, which is also known as platform to consumer. And between 2019 and 2021, revenue for third-party food delivery apps in the US more than doubled, from 13 billion to 28 billion, and is projected to double again to more than 53 billion by 2026. And within 5 years, third-party apps are forecasted to become the dominant sector of the online food delivery marketplace, bringing in more than 56% of revenue. I'll now turn it over to Alison Felix, who will present more on the scale of these deliveries and their impacts.
Great, thank you, Travis. I'm Alison Felix, a principal planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. The growth in rapid food deliveries, even prior to the pandemic, is due to the increased use of smartphones and the convenience of ordering anywhere and delivering nearly everywhere. According to research from the Business of Apps, the number of food delivery app users doubled from 2015 to 2020, and the items available for these rapid food deliveries are evolving. For example, the number of app-based convenience store items, such as snacks delivered, grew fivefold in 3 years from 2019 to 2021. According to payments.com, 4% of app users stated they order these rapid food delivery services daily. The growth in rapid food deliveries is important for several reasons. They offer delivery for many restaurants that previously may not have offered delivery, including smaller local restaurants. They charge restaurants fees that have a big impact on the profit margins for small businesses. Most use gig workers for deliveries. And finally, by offering products on apps, they provide a level of convenience for ordering food and convenience store items previously not seen or experienced. So while we did find limited data on the scale of rapid deliveries in the US, we could not find any data on the scale of deliveries or data on app usage in Greater Boston or in Massachusetts. One source we did find is that Boston ranks 3rd in the US for per person spending on food deliveries. This makes some sense given that Boston is often an early adopter of new technologies. So by using data from SEC filings from these companies and data from market research firms, we calculated our own estimates of rapid delivery trips. The blue bars on this bar chart illustrate the range of estimated rapid delivery trips. The black bars show annual ride-hailing trips in Massachusetts, and this information was obtained from the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. We estimate the number of food deliveries in Massachusetts has grown from about 36 to 45 million prior to the pandemic to approximately 80 to 105 million by 2021. Putting it another way, this is an estimated doubling of trips and equates to 11 to 15 deliveries per person per year in Massachusetts in 2021. It is important to note that this calculation is only for the third-party app companies DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats. This calculation does not apply to restaurant-to-consumer deliveries such as Domino's, or deliveries from companies such as GoPuff and Getir. So the number may even be higher. I'm now going to discuss the impact of rapid deliveries to the roadway network. From our research, we learned that most deliveries are within 1 to 5 miles. While we do know that deliveries by Getir are by bike or moped, understanding how the majority of these deliveries are made in the Greater Boston area, whether by car, bike, moped, scooter, or foot, is unknown. We could only find 2 US-based studies that shed some light on this question. One San Francisco-based study found that about 25% of deliveries were by bike, and another study in Lower Manhattan determined that most deliveries take place by bike. A survey conducted earlier this year, taken by delivery drivers, found that 24% will park illegally when they can't find parking, and 25% will spend several minutes looking for parking. The challenge of finding parking can add to roadway congestion, hurt efficiency, and raise costs. A 2021 study of food deliveries in London, conducted by several academic institutions, is based on actual rapid delivery data. It is the only resource we are aware of which analyzed data from a delivery provider whose name the report did not disclose. This study looked at distances traveled evaluated curb usage, and quantified transportation impacts and greenhouse gas emissions by vehicle type. The study found that intensive greenhouse gas emissions are associated with meal deliveries. Bicycle deliveries are most efficient, and the meal delivery sector is inefficient or highly fragmented when compared to parcel delivery services. Curb impacts from rapid deliveries can be greater than ride-hailing trips. The London-based study I just mentioned, which analyzed actual delivery data, determined that the time delivery workers spend deadheading or waiting for the next delivery assignment is between 30 to 50%. The average time it takes to drop off a meal is about 2 minutes, and waiting to pick up a meal is about 10 minutes. As you can see from this slide, both deadheading and pickup drop-off times exceed those of ride-hailing drivers. The reason why rapid delivery trips spend greater amounts of time at the curb is because they need to leave their vehicles, both to pick up and drop off food orders. Rapid deliveries do not just come from restaurants. Rather, they also come from dark stores and ghost kitchens. Often located in densely populated areas, dark stores, also known as micro-fulfillment centers, are primarily designed to fulfill online orders with deliveries. The majority are not open to the public, and if there is an in-person shopping component, it is completed via a transaction where employees fill the order and hand items over the counter to the customer. Heavily funded by venture capital investments, the largest startup companies operating in this sector are Getir and GoPuff. Primarily offering groceries and convenience store items, a dark store typically carries between 1,500 and 5,000 products. By comparison, a supermarket stocks an estimated 35,000 products. Ghost kitchens are commercial facilities that house one or more restaurant operators who prepare food, typically fast casual meals, exclusively to fulfill online orders. There is no in-person dining or customer takeout. Ranging in size from a few hundred to a few thousand square feet, a ghost kitchen can share both equipment and staff to supply multiple restaurants and reduce overhead costs which traditional brick and mortar restaurants incur. Based on MAPC's research, most ghost kitchens in Massachusetts are not standalone facilities, but rather they operate from existing restaurants as virtual brands, such as Guy Fieri's Flavortown Kitchen operating out of Bertucci's, or shared kitchens for small businesses such as Food Revolution in Stoneham. Since ghost kitchens and dark stores do not bring in the foot traffic of a traditional store, they have the potential to diminish the vibrancy and economic vitality of neighborhoods and main streets. On the other hand, ghost kitchens and dark stores provide a service, especially to those who may be homebound. Moreover, shared kitchens can provide ways for small catering and other food businesses to start up with limited capital. So both dark stores and ghost kitchens are critical to the operation of rapid deliveries, and they are part of the rapid delivery ecosystem. While third-party rapid delivery platforms can play a role in expanding a restaurant's customer reach, they also charge high commission or service fees and generate competition between in-person restaurants and delivery-only ghost kitchens. Commission or service fees incurred by restaurants typically range between 15 to 30% per order. This can be a significant added expense for restaurants and particularly challenging for small, independent neighborhood restaurants as they already operate on slim profit margins that range on average between 3 to 5%. According to industry experts, this business model is not likely to be sustainable in the long term. I will now turn the presentation back to Travis, who will cover delivery worker impacts and discuss the report's recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. So you found it difficult to estimate the number of workers who provide rapid food deliveries. Most rapid food delivery platforms consider their delivery workers to be independent contractors, and most labor surveys do not differentiate between independent contractors who do ride hailing or food deliveries versus other type of independent contractors who work in professions such as IT and accounting. And furthermore, given the transient nature of the work, it's difficult to determine the number of workers over time. But one study estimates that around 5 to 10% of the workforce in Massachusetts has recently worked for some sort of app-based business. According to surveys we could find, rapid food delivery workers are more likely to be non-white, younger, immigrant, and low income. As independent contractors, they face confusing rules and options on liability insurance, whether delivering by car or other means. And most of the gig workers consider the money they earn from these jobs as essential or important for meeting basic needs. Yet many earn less than $16 per hour after expenses such as transportation and insurance. Finally, a health survey of workers found that those who are paid on a per activity basis, such as rapid food deliveries, reported poor overall physical and mental health compared to salary workers, likely because of the lack of affordable health insurance options and because of the unstable nature of their income. So now we'll cover some of the recommendations from the report. And so how can we sustainably manage the impacts of rapid food deliveries? First, we recommend that rapid food delivery platforms be required to report data similar to the requirements that are already in place for ride hailing in Massachusetts. The data sharing requirements at a minimum should include data on precise trip origins, destinations, time spent at the curb, time of day, and travel mode. We also recommend an assessment for delivery trips that is proportional to their impacts. Currently, the existing statutes governing the assessments on ride-hailing trips in Massachusetts do not include trips for deliveries made by rapid food delivery platforms. And the assessment revenue should be used to address local impacts like the assessments on ride-hailing are used to mitigate impacts on local streets. We also recommend that delivery workers and ride-hailing drivers receive fair compensation for their work. And the new rules proposed for worker classification by the White House may change the way delivery workers are compensated by rapid food delivery platforms. We also recommend that the Commonwealth survey workers to monitor their wages and tips, particularly for workers who rely on these jobs as a major source of income. We also recommend that delivery platforms clarify insurance requirements, provide adequate safety training, and offer programs that can help workers access e-bikes and electric vehicles to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, cities and towns should implement targeted pilots on better curb management around popular eateries with high levels of deliveries. They should also establish zoning standards around ghost kitchens and fulfillment centers when needed to minimize traffic and delivery disruptions with residential areas and other businesses while still supporting small startups and shared kitchen spaces. We also recommend municipalities strengthen placemaking around local retailers and restaurants, such as funding that was provided via MassDOT Shared Streets and Spaces program that helps set up outdoor dining. And we recommend that cities and towns survey local restaurants, kitchens, and micro-fulfillment centers to learn how the delivery business is evolving and impacting Main streets and the local economy. And that is the conclusion of our presentation. We'll be putting the link later on where you can go download the report. And I'll turn it over to Eric, who will moderate our questions.
Yeah, thank you, Alison, Travis. Really great job. This is a emerging, area, and we are, trying to get our arms around it. That's why one of our first recommendations is about understanding the impact of actually having data. That's been the biggest challenge to understanding this, is actually getting data to understand, where this is happening and the scale of it. But we've done a pretty decent job of trying to estimate that. Be interested in anybody's questions. Please put them into the chat. Maybe I'll kick it off to just get people started. So one of the recommendations we have in this report is about things that municipalities can do to try to see more of these deliveries by like e-bike or bicycle and not by automobile. And since so many of these deliveries are within 5 miles, Alison, are there any municipalities that are piloting e-cargo bike activities in the region? You're muted.
Yes, the city of Boston is undertaking a pilot e-cargo bike study. They will actually, at the beginning of next year, deploy in working with a consultant, a e-cargo bike delivery program. And MAPC is assisting with that effort in terms of reaching out to other municipalities who would also be potentially interested in undertaking a similar pilot. So if anybody is on the call who is from a Massachusetts municipality and is interested in learning more, please don't hesitate to follow up. But that's something we're excited about and looking forward to working with the city of Boston on.
Great. And Alison, maybe you can drop the link in the chat
Sure.
to that program.
Yes.
Steve Magoon from Watertown says, like the data collection aspect, but concerned about additional fees will result in larger impact on restaurants. Travis and Alison, do you want to speak to that, or Lizzie, about fees? I mean, this is something we have also looked at with respect to the sort of the TNC trips and finding the right balance.
Yeah, Lizzie, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'm glad to weigh in. Hi, everyone. I'm Lizzie Wyant. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs at MAPC. And yeah, we're definitely thinking about this exact question, Steve, is we wouldn't want to put a greater impact on residents, on restaurants, especially in this like recovery moment that I think we're all still realistically in, and particularly on our smaller restaurants. And so I think we'd have to think about how we structure it in a way that it didn't actually put that impact there. In Massachusetts, we still, the impact on the fees is actually still not passed on to riders themselves. And so it ends up kind of coming on to the TNC companies who are in that rider space. So I think it's something that we'd have to think about as part of the whole picture, but definitely top of mind as we think about these policy solutions.
Thank you, Lizzie. Another question, do we have any information on what age groups are more likely to utilize rapid deliveries, thinking about college age students and how that might impact municipalities, communities that are very campus heavy?
Yeah, I could answer that, Travis. There was limited data on that as well. However, we did find one resource from Statista that indicated that the range in age and demographic is cross-cutting, that there's really not that there's a equally distributed spread in terms of who are the adopters of this type of delivery option.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think from what we've seen with any kind of technology, you will often have maybe younger age groups that are adopting first, but it quickly gets picked up by various groups. And as Alison said, the research shows that there's a wide range of people that are using these services. And I think with the pandemic, a lot of people learned how to use different apps and online ordering, and they've used it. So that just what we've seen from ride hailing and others, that this can be picked up very quickly.
The next question is about kind of related to public health. Since brick and mortar restaurants serving dine-in customers must adhere to strict requirements to keep food in temperature, but what recourse does a rapid food delivery customer have when hot food arrives cold or dangerously out of temperature? To what degree must local health departments have to oversee that situation? Did we look into any of those aspects, Alison and Travis?
No, we did not. And so that's an area that we did not look at and did not see anything on that. But yeah, so at this point we haven't. But that was not an area. This is as we saw from our research. This is something that can cover many different areas of our economy and everything. But that was one area we did not look at.
Yeah, and I will add that it's not within a restaurant as part of a delivery service provider's best interest is to want to serve a meal that should be delivered hot, not hot. So having the marketing and the ability to have temperature controlled deliveries of food items is in the best interest of the delivery model of the business. But as Travis mentioned, that is something we did not cover.
The next question is, would be curious to know what effect street and curb design has on the proportion of a restaurant's orders are done via delivery apps. Like sort of the link between, easy to pull up and park versus, areas with more challenging.
Yeah, our research showed that when you have areas with, obviously, if it's something that has a lot of parking, that makes it easier for these type of orders. And we have seen that, but even in suburban areas, we have seen, anecdotally and from a few things where having the parking spaces up front that are designated for deliveries or pickups is something that's coming along. And we're seeing certain fast food places that are redoing their entire parking and dining experience so that it's much more about allowing people to pick up orders for delivery or you buy online and you pick up yourself. When it comes to a more built up environment, let's say like in downtown Boston or on a main street, we have seen, again, this is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge just like with anything, how do you handle deliveries, things that are being done in a tight space, also with outdoor dining. So, we are seeing a few areas that are trying to do, I think, some pilots is like, what's the best way to have this happen that minimizes the impacts. And so one thing, we did talk to some of our land use planners here at MAPC about what are they seeing, and often I think it's a lot of the things that are a challenge for whether it's a small micro fulfillment center or a restaurant that has a lot of deliveries. It's the same. A lot of times the things that can help improve that are just good urban design policies of having a clear sidewalk as much as possible, deliveries and other things in the back. Finding ways to, have the curb be a place where that is more for quick pickups and maybe not long-term, like 2 or 3 hour parking, but for also deliveries. So those are challenges that are, we've seen in communities that I think it's a case-by-case basis of determining the pilots to try to make that work.
The next two questions are about the fees. The first one is about an example of a pilot in the Midwest where a nonprofit helped restaurants so they didn't have the large service fees. And then kind of related question is about New York City's capping delivery app fees. Curious how these commission fees drive or don't drive restaurants to fulfill these super high delivery volumes. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So the commission fee is a complicated topic, but simply put, there are many states and cities during the pandemic, including Massachusetts, placed a cap on commission fees, and this would restrict the percentage that companies such as Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats could charge. Right now, as part of our research, the commission fee can be negotiated. So if you're a large restaurant operator, say you're a Burger King, and you operate many restaurants in one state, you have a stronger leverage to negotiate a commission fee with a delivery service platform. However, if you are a smaller mom and pop store, smaller business, that leverage is less because you're small because of size. So that's a challenge with the commission fees, and that is ongoing. I believe currently there are states that have caps on commission fees even post-pandemic, but it's an area in fluctuation, and it's evolving.
The next question from Jessica Belanger, who used to be at MAPC, is about just how has this industry changed over the course of this work. We've been looking at this for a while now. How is the industry growing or shifting? Thanks, Jessica.
Hey, Jessica. I think what we saw, we've been researching this for I think about a year now, Alison, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, we certainly saw, as I mentioned in the beginning, we saw that this is something that's really picked up, especially it was already growing, but we saw the pandemic just accelerated it. I think the biggest shift we've seen is the evolving nature of what is being delivered and what can be delivered, and even where it can be delivered. So just as we saw again with ride hailing, which we initially thought you saw that maybe in the beginning in a few urban areas, maybe like in New York City or San Francisco and in those areas, and now we see ride hailing many places. So same thing with the rapid food deliveries, and that it's grown in terms of its geographic coverage, but like I said, also in what you can order. So I think you've seen the ads probably, Uber Eats says Uber Not Eats, the things that they can order. You think you've seen the ads for DoorDash does pets supplies. So I think that's really one of the things that we're really seeing the difference here is it probably still is largely the restaurant orders, especially at lunch and dinner. But now we're seeing you can order just about anything anywhere, as we mentioned. And, it has some convenience. I know, like when I caught COVID, it was really nice being able to order something and know that I could do some kind of contactless pickup or have it delivered if needed. So, but I think we're seeing the shift in what is available and what can be delivered and how quickly it can be delivered. So, groceries, you don't even have to do it days in advance. You could order it that morning and get it delivered later in the day. So I think that's really the shift we're seeing is just what's available and what can be delivered just about anywhere.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, this body of work was, I will say that in the early days when we first came up with this concept idea, we discussed it with Lizzie Wyant, who said, this sounds really interesting. Why don't you come back with a 10-page, no more than 10 pages outline of what you think the policy implications are and what recommendations you have. Well, fast forward a year, here we are today with a report that's well over 100 pages. So with that, during that year, Travis and I constantly exchanged emails about what's new in the industry, what's changing in the industry. And I will say, to echo what Travis has said, that it's more than food. This is a very, very rapidly changing space. There are businesses like Sephora, I think there's Macy's, they have their individual contracts with third-party deliveries providers to deliver their goods. Even yesterday, I came across an article where GoPuff is piloting ground delivery drones for food on university campuses. So very rapidly changing, and also the how these companies are working with each other, and they have their own mergers or working arrangements. For example, I believe it was GoPuff and either it was Getir, or I'm sorry, GoPuff and
it was Grubhub with
Grubhub are now working together and have collaborated. So it's a very competitive space for them, but they're also are creatively working together
and
at the same time.
And I'll just add that in the time we started this research, there was a company that opened some of their stores in Boston, and within the year they closed. So Joker was the name of it. So the space,
and
very
Fridge No
competitive.
More. There was two companies.
Yeah. So
Fridge No More was another.
Yeah. So it's still evolving as what can be done and at what profit margins.
There are a number of sort of comments and questions about the challenges of parking and double parking, and particularly impacts on, when there are residential neighborhoods with restaurants. And I know, we've grappled with policy solutions, how much is this, the responsibility of the municipality to kind of enforce existing rules versus how much of the onus should be put on the restaurants themselves. But it's challenging if the restaurant doesn't have a relationship with the company that's kind of ordering the food and delivering it. And so one question is just about any studies that sort of document the increase in traffic, and then another question is about just should there be more onus put on restaurants and figuring out how the restaurants themselves can implement to make pickup from the restaurants less problematic or congested.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Allison. Okay.
Oh, I was going to say just two things. And then first is with the recommendations, one of the key recommendations we have is based on the finding that deliveries take place within 1 to 5 miles, is trying to encourage that these trips do not take place in cars, and really trying to encourage other modes of travel, such as e-bikes, bikes, scooters, mopeds, even foot. So that could be one option. That's one space where the challenge of congestion at the curb could be addressed. And then also there is a pilot we're aware of that's I believe it's in Aspen, Colorado, that looks at, it's based on loading, but rather the users who want to park in a loading zone make a reservation ahead of time using an app. So there can be some measure of demand or control of demand. So even though that's geared for truck delivery, that's something to follow, and potentially a future pilot could be along those lines, but for food and food deliveries. And I'll turn it over to you, Travis, to add your thoughts.
Yeah, we didn't see any. Yeah, we didn't see any studies where there was something very specific about how to minimize double parking and things like that. What we did see, if my memory is correct, like in London, they even noted, even though a lot of the deliveries are done by moped, it still created a problem at the curb and at the restaurants with the conflicts of pedestrians, cyclists, mopeds. And I think what it is we have really a lot of our streets are still geared towards the automobile, where there is the primary mode of travel, even in a place like in Greater Boston. And so I said this before, but we set up a system that's really inefficient, where we have a 1-ton vehicle deliver a 1-pound burrito 1 mile, and that's so the inefficiencies are really there. And I think what we need to do is support municipalities to try to find ways to pilot programs and find ways to work with restaurants to see if they can find ways to make this more efficient. And one way is if we had greater a bike network, more of a separated bike network, and then e-bikes, and then I think that would encourage people to go by bike, whether they're delivery workers or anyone else. And I think that's really one thing we could help municipalities do, is to look for ways to support pilots that would minimize that traffic.
Great. Is there any information on the profit margin of these companies? Steve says, my impression is that they're small, and it's an important aspect for how much leeway there is for fees.
Mm-hmm.
Did we look, is there any data out there about the profitability of the companies?
The delivery companies themselves also are not profiting, and they are inflated by venture capital investments, which is a temporary, keeps things going temporarily. But again, the long-term business model does not, if this were to continue, the long-term business model is not in favor of how things are continuing. So right now, the profitability of the companies themselves is that just like ride hailing, Uber and Lyft, these third-party food delivery providers are not profiting. And we do have some information on that, but the key takeaway is, as Travis mentioned earlier, during the course of the year in studying this space, companies have gone out of business, companies have merged, and right now it's an inflated, they're being carried over or carried through by venture capital funding, but in the long term, it's not a model that will be sustainable. Have thoughts on that, Travis?
No, I mean, we didn't look at this a whole lot, but I think, we recognize that it's an evolving marketplace, and we were really interested in the, what the impacts are and how can we, sustainably manage that given the impacts, as I mentioned, on the streets and everything. So, I think, as Alison said, it's still evolving. We're still seeing how, different companies might shake out. And so I think it's something we'll continue to study.
Another question is, what are the implications of drones on the delivery, on delivery workers and the future viability of those positions?
So we didn't see a whole lot of I mean, we've seen some pilots, and then Alison mentioned, we've seen that there's been the robots doing some of these deliveries in more of a confined space, like a college campus, or a very tight space of where those can be done. I think that don't know if I've seen anything of actual drones. If I'm imagining like a drone is something that's flying and dropping food on your doorstep, I don't think we've seen that quite yet. I see Alison shaking her head. So no, but we have seen the robots. In terms of what that might be for labor, I honestly think we'll just again have to see how that works out, because oftentimes I think we've seen the programs with drones, they sometimes have to have someone follow them who's working with the drone to make sure that things get there okay. So there's still a labor aspect there, but we're just now starting to see a little bit of this robot delivery happen in a few areas. But I don't know how much it will happen in the future. I think there's a lot of things that can still go wrong with any kind of delivery, dropping on a doorstep or in a yard or going down a sidewalk. It's sort of it's really I think it's going to be a small piece. I still think there's going to be people delivering food is my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The next two questions are about zoning. The first one is about, are there any zoning requirements to encourage more efficient delivery and shorter wait times anywhere that you're aware of?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are there zoning requirements to encourage more efficient delivery and shorter wait times anywhere that you're aware of? My sense is that there are not, particularly to to just like wait times, but there is zoning about these types of businesses and those aspects.
Yeah, I will say we have done research regarding the zoning. And the information we did find is in an appendix B of the report. However, that zoning discussion is based more on the design of the buildings, where the building should be. And when I say buildings, not the restaurants, but either the ghost kitchens or dark stores, and where they should be placed, the design of those facilities. For example, the city of Miami Beach requires a tiered, they have a tiered formula that for a dark store, that a certain percentage of the square footage of the building needs to be walk-in customer component. And then the rest can be a dark store. And we tried to look in Massachusetts as to what are municipalities doing in Massachusetts. We only could find one, and that was the city of Newton. And that information is also in the appendix. And they have addressed placement of where zoning should be for dark stores, as well as some design measures, meaning like the number of parking spaces, where those parking spaces should be located, and also where the dark stores should be located in the city. And that, however, it is limited. Also, in many municipalities, the zoning is by right, as is currently written. So if a company wants to have a dark store or a ghost kitchen, they don't need to. It's by right. So there's not a it's already in place for that type of development to occur.
I think this will be our last question, and is a good one, I think, to end on. If the business model is not sustainable, does it appear to be on the way out, or will it evolve into something that is sustainable, whatever externalities get foisted on the rest of us in the name of private profits?
Yeah, I think that this, as I mentioned before, this marketplace will continue to evolve. I think the ability to, and the convenience of being able to order things is something that people like and will continue to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we start to see more of the buy online, pick up in restaurant or pick up in store as a model. That might be a way to be a little bit more sustainable, where you have the availability to order something, but then, finding other ways to get the food to the customer. We also might start to see some things where, just greater efficiencies of maybe how the pickup and drop off happens, if it's especially in larger areas like a university campus, instead of maybe all the orders going to each room or each building, there might be a centralized drop off point. So I think the space and the marketplace will continue to evolve and probably will continue to grow. So.
Yeah, I will echo that. Travis and I did look at the SEC filings for the third quarter this year, and the volume of orders has not gone down. And we also recently came across a report. It's not in our report, MAPC's report, but it was by a market research firm called Yippit Data. And they essentially said that they used a measurement looking at the average order values are going up. So when someone places an order, that order is increasing in value. And also average order frequency is going up. So this report did not discuss the sustainability of that model, but it does conclude that people, when they use these services, are ordering more, they're spending more, and they're ordering more frequently. But the question of the model of it being profitable is still a state of transition, and to be determined how it will play out over time.
Travis and Alison, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie Wyatt to wrap up.
Thanks so much, Eric, and thanks, Travis and Alison, for this incredible work. I think it's no secret this stuff is some of my favorite of the work that we do at MAPC. As a closeout, I just wanted to thank all of you for coming and for your really great questions. And I wanted to give a sense of what MAPC is going to be doing primarily to address some of the items that were raised in the report and get to the recommendations that Travis and Alison highlighted. So really the first thing that we're going to try to work on is to continue to right-size our ride-hailing assessments. This is something we're really far behind compared to our sister major metros across the country, and it's time to make sure that we're bringing the right amount of money for the impact that these trips are having on our system. And then eventually we would try to include rapid food deliveries in that fee assessment. Again, bearing in mind some of those concerns that folks raised around the impact on restaurants and our small businesses and main streets. We're going to be hoping to file legislation this legislative session that would particularly get to this data piece so that Travis and Alison don't have to do kind of guerrilla data collection, but we'd have a really clear sense of the impact that these trips and services are having on our entire transportation system and on our cities and towns. And then we're going to be working closely with our cities and towns. There's a lot of questions in the chat about things that we're doing to try to help our communities actually address some of these curb management pilots and some of these questions around zoning. And we're going to dig deeper into that and really try to help our cities and towns come to some conclusions and next steps. And then I do also just want to note, we recognize that there's potentially legislation out there this legislative session. There was last legislative session around the impacts on fair wages and benefits for those who are working in the gig economy, for delivery workers, and making sure that we're protecting them. This isn't something that we're going to be spending a lot of our time on, but we are working closely with a number of stakeholder advocates who are doing a lot of deep work in this space, and we expect to continue to think about that with them as we can. I want to thank you again all so much for coming. You know where to find us. Alison and Travis's contact information is below, and I'm sure they'd be willing to go deeper on any of these issues because, as you can see, this is a really exciting area of research, and we're really excited to keep working on it. I think the report is up on our website. I think we can put one more link in the chat for folks who haven't had a chance to download it, but I encourage you to do so and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day and happy holidays.